On a more serious note, Mr. President, and turning now to the topic of conversation that is before us on the floor tonight, we are considering the National Security Supplemental, and it is absolutely true that America faces no shortage of threats to our national security. Our own borders, to begin with, are, as we sit here and speak tonight, wide open. The number of border crossings continues at all-time highs. There are, in fiscal year 2023, 860,000 illegal gotaways, 302,000 encounters with illegal aliens in December of this last year alone. That's an all-time high for a single month. The number of Chinese migrants at the southwest border jumped more than tenfold, from 2,176 in fiscal year 2022 to 24,314 in fiscal year 2023. CBS News reports today that migrants in Mexico have made 64 million requests, 64 million requests to enter the United States using the CBP-1 app. That's an app that the federal government developed with your tax dollars for the phone that illegal immigrants can now use to get concierge service to cross the border. 64 million illegal immigrants have asked to set up appointments to enter the United States using this app. I laugh, but it's not funny. It's not funny at all. It's deadly serious. The threat across our southern border is deadly serious. The threats that we face on all sides across the world are deadly serious. In China, and imperial China is now twice as powerful relative to the United States as the Soviet Union was at its peak. And China explicitly seeks to dominate the world's largest economic area and to displace this country as a global power. They would have monumental, unprecedented implications. That would have monumental, unprecedented implications for America's interests. And we cannot allow that to happen. But right now, we are considering a so-called security supplemental that puts those pressing concerns last, not first. That does not do anything for our border at all. In fact, we were first served up a so-called border bill that would have made the problem worse, not better, a border bill that I think of as the Full Employment Act for illegal aliens, the border bill so-called that was before this chamber a week ago. That border bill, its central feature from my point of view, was to give illegal aliens already in the country expedited work permits. Expedited work permits now, such that millions of illegals, almost none of whom will ultimately qualify to remain here permanently in the country, including for asylum claims. Over 80% of asylum claims fail, we know statistically, and yet that bill would have given those illegal aliens here expedited work permits to go enter our labor force right now. We are looking at the flatlining of wages in this country for working people. Blue-collar workers, A, are having trouble finding a job, B, haven't seen a real rise in their wages in years. Over the last 30 years, blue-collar wages have declined, and yet the solution of this body would be to create even more cheap labor in this country. We know why the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and Wall Street loved that bill. It's a cheap labor bill. They love cheap labor. Their first preference would be overseas cheap labor, but if they can't get that, then why not subject Americans and those who are here legally to even more illegal cheap labor? It makes absolutely no sense at all, Mr. President, none at all, which is why I voted against it. And yet that's what we were offered as a solution to the border. As to a solution to China, this body has drug its feet and neglected its responsibilities toward China for years. One is tempted to say decades, and the current security supplemental does nothing meaningful in that regard. In fact, the focus is entirely, almost, certainly heavily, on Ukraine. More money for Ukraine. We've spent $115 billion almost in Ukraine so far. This bill would commit tens of billions more, and to what end?